Today's episode is brought to you by Daura, the platform for digital shares. And thanks to digital shares, private placements and equity crowdfundings become easy, fast, and cheap to carry out. Daura offers free access for investors and a simple digital subscription process. You can promote investments worldwide through their digital channels, and customers and partners can be turned into shareholders and brand ambassadors. If you want to learn more, go to daura.ch. That's daura.ch.
People know there is climate change and they want to do something against it, but the most of it don't want and cannot pay anything for additional for it, and also the effort should be very much smaller.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Roman, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Hi, Sylvan. Yeah, thank you to be here. Thank you very much.
You're the co-founder and CEO at PayGreen, a startup that is developing an ecological payment method to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's a very bold mission. We're going to dive into that in a minute. Before we do so, I want to start with your personal background. You studied business administration and entrepreneurship, and pretty early on, you actually helped to create not one, but two startups. How did these opportunities come about?
Yeah, I was studying business administration and got interested into funding startups and also entrepreneurship. So I always had a lot of ideas what you can do, how you can solve problems, and I was interested to do this also, to start small projects and develop them. I then get into this startup community, this network, and just realize there are a lot of other smart people with really, really good ideas. So I just see, okay, that's a great idea, and that was the start. The first thing was these artificial lenses for this terahertz radiation. So it was really interesting. It was really, we were a really nerd group of engineers and of physicians from ETH and EPFL. And I joined them. They won a lot of prizes, we won a lot of prizes. So it was really rocket science for an outside perspective. It was rocket science. And it was really interesting. But that was my first startup. Then I also saw that Innomedica was my last startup. They were developing a cancer medication or are developing cancer medication or Parkinson medication. And yeah, it just was also just an interesting case. I thought I have to work with them. Yeah, so I stepped back with my ideas and helped other funders to start their business, and we did it together then.
Amazing. Why did you then decide to leave these two projects? I imagine, that was probably not the easiest step to take.
Yeah, it's always interesting to leave a project after a few years when you notice, okay, your learning curve is flattening and you can go step again outside your comfort zone, do something new. But honestly, it's not always this. The first startup, it was like I started, and after a few months, I realized, okay, we are rocket science, but it's not the business case. I just made the projection and saw, okay, we can make like 4 million revenue every year. So it's not the business case, it's for me in this case. Yeah. And therefore, I started with the second startup. And everything we're going well. We are now over 50 employees, raised over 50 million in Swiss francs and everything. But like I said in the beginning, also after 4 or 5 years, yes, you got too much into comfort zone. And I realized there are people now working for the startup which maybe also know it better and are better than you. So yeah, I can leave the startup again, even if I loved it, and do something new. And I did something new afterwards. Yeah.
Amazing. We're going to talk about that, of course. But where does your entrepreneurial drive come from ultimately? Do you have any role models or any entrepreneurs in the family that inspired you to pursue that career path?
Yes, everybody in our company had some entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. Even my aunt, who's pharmaceutical, had a pharmaceutical background, has his own pharmacy and stuff like this. So everybody's a little bit doing their own business. Even also another aunt who was doing some stuff with digital marketing and everything. So yes, I have it in my family. But beside of it, the role models, I just enjoy doing projects and realize them and really being intrinsic motivated and pair with other people working together on the same goal. That's really making me motivated to work and to stand up every morning.
Amazing. Really this intrinsic motivation and joy together that you enjoy the process.
Exactly, yeah. It's also, the opportunity cost is high. You can work in another company for a high salary. This can also makes you happy, of course. Both will be fine, yeah, and will be good.
Sure. Then in 2018, you were shopping at an eco-friendly shop and realized that they pay an incredibly high fee to the credit card company. And this then sort of sparked an idea in your head. What exactly happened back then?
Yeah, maybe I have to start a little bit earlier. As with PayGreen now, we, like you said, we are implementing a carbon pricing into financial transaction, also into a purchase. And I have a business administration background, an economic background, and I knew to fight climate change, on the one side, we have to have inventions like Climeworks where they capture carbon out of the atmosphere. We have to have the compensation markets, and the best way is to reduce it. And at the moment, our system is not working well because now you can emitting carbon for free and it's not cost you anything. But at the end, the society, it costs something to society. Yeah. So carbon should cost something. But I just also thought about how you can now implement this carbon pricing into society without additional costs. So I came up with the idea with these transaction fees from credit cards, which already exist, but these fees we can use as a carbon pricing model. So what was the moment? I go back to your question. I was in my second startup, Innomedica, the cancer medication startup. We had our office in Bern, in Langas. And next to the office, there were this small biological regional shop. And I was often buying their stuff. Also on this day, I was buying something, I think, for 10 francs, not that much. I had no cash with me. So what I have to do, I have to pay with my card, like everybody used to in the meantime. I had my American Express and I knew, okay, now this small shop have to pay extra much fees now for this 10 francs purchase. So it makes no sense. It makes this carbon-less products from the region much more expensive. They should be less expensive, because they have less carbon.
Right.
So there was a little bit the moment I realized we can implement this carbon pricing with these transaction fees. And transaction fees, let's say from American Express, should not be like the size of the shop. It should be like the carbon they're emitting.
So basically the fees get higher if there's a higher carbon emission.
Exactly, yes. So we now have fees starting at 2.5%. And if you compare it with other credit cards, I had yesterday a discussion with a customer, and it's depending also on the size. And if every customer is different, they are paying 1.4% per purchase for Twint. They're paying 3% for PayPal and 2.75% for American Express. So it's still a lot of fees, And also, if you take a look at the EBITDA margin, normal EBITDA margin, I don't know, are within 10%, I think. And Apple or also like Novartis have like 20 to 30%. And MasterCard and Visa have like 60%. So you see there the range is really high. They have a lot of fees and no costs. And the profitability is really high still. Yeah. So also we calculated and saw also with our model, we have the same fees like other credit cards. So a shop doesn't cost it anything. They can pay the transaction fees to us as the carbon pricing, or they can pay to Visa or MasterCard. It's the same.
Exactly. So you had this idea, then you presented it to Innosuisse, you got accepted into their program. You also presented it to investors later on. How do you convince Innosuisse, but also investors to believe in this idea stage, startup idea, basically?
As me, myself, I have also to convince myself all the time, So also for me and myself, Innosuisse was the first step. I had a great job with my last startup and I really made fun. I didn't have a reason to leave it so far. But I had this wish and this idea to solve climate change. So my first proof of concept was this founder bias, to see if this founder bias exists. That means that I love my idea more than it really is worthwhile.
Yeah.
So to the first proof of concept to check this was going to Innosuisse, present the idea on a paper, and see if also other like this idea, or I'm just dreaming about the big case. Yeah, that's often the topic with men. They're thinking, okay, we can fight Google and have the world conquered and everything. So it's always good to have a woman in the founder team because they are much more realistic than me. And that was the first proof of concept. So yourself making one proof after another. And one was, for example, to have investors. Yeah, we had this business angel who invested years ago into our startup. And how you can convince them. Of course, you have to have a great idea. Yeah, the idea has to be great. You have to have a good team. And it's really important, yeah. And probably what I think is also the persistence. You have to show that you will follow your course. And in a startup, there are there's really a lot of ups and downs. And you should not give up with these downs. Yeah. Even in my last startup, how often we get results with our cancer medication that it's not, the efficacy is not that good like we meant to be. And so often we could have stopped it, but then we just realized, okay, we made mistakes, or this was not good, we can improve this. We learned at the end the most in these down moments about our medication itself. Yeah. Also, this Parkinson medication grew out of a phase like this down phase where we learned a new thing about our medication. Yeah. And you have this persistence, the good idea, the plan. Also, you have to go pivoting, as you could change your plans, be flexible. And then I think you can convince an investor.
I like what you said, to also signal that you're willing to walk the walk, no matter if the investor joins. So you say, hey, I'm going to do that. I invite you to join my journey, to join my mission. But even if you don't join, I will do it anyways. I think that's a very powerful signal to send to investors and say, look, this is an opportunity, but I don't need you to make it happen. I want to make it happen anyways.
As at the end, yourself, you find a way how you can create it. And the first way you think it will be realized is not often the best and not the right way. Yeah. Still, you have to make, like I said, this proof of concept to yourself. You can have this founder bias. You have to check if also other people believe in it. If an investor believes in it, then it's really fine. Even if it can be circumstances at the moment, the environment is not that good, or maybe a too early stage or something like this. But you have to prove concept. In my case now, it was like that we became part of Google. So also Google believed in us. We had really good industrial key person leaders who believed in our system, in our startup. So they are also part now of it, like Malte Polzin, who was CEO from Prague, or like Thierry Kneisler, who was CEO and founder of Twint. They are in our advisory board and also part of our company. So that all proof of concept still, that you know, okay, you're not the only one who believes in this idea and he supports you. And also after you went live, for example, in the market, the figures were really good. So me, myself, I also worked long time ago now as a 50% as a consultant. So just also, I know startups are not a sprint, they are a marathon. So you have to have this persistence and the ability to survive. But after now we had this figures from going live from the market and really see that people want our solution. I also quitted this 50% consulting job in a big Swiss company, because that's also the founder's risk. Yeah. It's a little bit different when you come out of your studies. You don't have that high living cost. You cannot lose that much.
Sure.
But if you have a good paying job and you have high living costs and then risk it to go back to a startup, then you can lose a lot, yeah. So that's also a little bit all the founder's dilemma.
Or at least we think that we lose more, right? Because it's basically a self-built cage mentally a bit.
Exactly, yeah. So maybe you should not build up this cage with high living costs and everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You talked about we. So to make the first prototype happen, to make the company happen, you of course also needed to assemble a team. Who is the key part of your team?
I have really great colleagues in my team now. From the sustainability sector to marketing to software developer. Of course, it's really different now. Previous to my last startup. In last startup, we had this cancer medication, and we really had a lot of people right out from the PhD in biochemics, in chemics and medical also, who were really intrinsic motivated to make research on cancer medication, everything. So it was, I will say, easy to find new people. Yeah. Now, if I compare it with PayGreen, it's like we have the software developer section, and it's like this. There are not enough software developer in Switzerland. You also know it.
Of course, yeah.
And it's hard to find good software developers. So I'm really thankful for my software developer I have myself. Also with the sustainability, at the moment, I think there are still enough experts, so you can find sustainability employees. But with the growth in the market, in the sustainability market, I also see a lack of sustainability experts in a few years, honestly. Yeah. So if you compare it with other consulting startups, how they grew, within 3 years, they grew 10 times the employees numbers, so really high numbers. So I think also, if you think about studying sustainability, it's a good choice now to do it.
Yeah, especially also if you look to the US, the whole investment community is very, very bullish on climate tech startups. So this is a new, very, very hot and important topic.
Yes, the market are really interesting. As a Paris Agreement, they predicted that the sustainability market will grow to $12 billion in 2030. Yeah. That means it will become one of the biggest sectors in the worldwide. I don't know the numbers exactly, but I think at the moment the financial sector is like 10 billions and energy sector is like 4 billions. So just to compare it, it's a really big sector. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also with PayGreen, we have the e-commerce sector who is growing like 13% annually, and the payment market who has depending on the source, like 41 to 100 unicorn startups. So yes, and no startup has somehow a sustainable background. So yes, it's also a really interesting market.
Absolutely. I also want to talk a bit more about your actual solution, your product. You already briefly mentioned that, the companies that use your service, they pay a fee. It's free for the customers. And you also said that it is determined by the CO2 emissions, basically, of a product that someone buys. So how does that exactly work? Can you explain a bit more what determines the exact price that a store pays to you?
Of course, yeah. So we developed two things. We developed on one hand a payment method. So in online shops, you can pay your purchases with PayGreen instead of Visa or MasterCard. And it's easy to use payment method with no account needed, no app needed, nothing. On the other side, we developed this carbon footprint assessment where we assess the carbon footprint and show to the companies how big it is and how they can reduce it. What you're doing now, we are implementing this carbon pricing. So on the perspective of the consumer, it's really easy. You just can make your purchases and then see you can pay with PayGreen, and you don't do something good. Also, it doesn't cost you anything, and that's the big thing. We wanted to develop something, and a survey shows and the research shows that people know there is climate change and they want to do something against it, but the most of it don't want and cannot pay anything for additional for it, and also the effort should be very much small effort. So with PayGreen, they don't have to pay anything to do something for the environment, and also it's not a big effort. And in addition, that's also together with Google, we made this research. It needs a little bit of reward. So we still have planting trees as a little compensation thing. But we really focus on reducing.
I see.
That's our main focus. Yeah. And now to answer your questions, on the shop's perspective, like I said, they already pay like 2.75 or 3% for PayPal or American Express. With us, they start with 2.5% fees. And then within 2 months, we make this assessment. If the fee, as if they have less carbon, if they have a small carbon footprint, they even have less fees. As if they are nearly carbon neutral, they have like 0.9% fees. So we can already reduce their fees, and they already get rewarded for for what they did for the environment.
Nice.
If they have a bad carbon footprint, and the fee is above 2.5%, as according to the footprint, then they have like a year time to reduce the carbon footprint, or then after a year to accept the higher fees. Or if they don't accept the higher fees and get punished, like I said, then we remove the payment method PayGreen again from their site. And there are different labels. So if you are carbon neutral, you have this gold label. And if you're just starting with us, you have this partner label, so also the consumer can see it. And other selling points are that, you have normal fees, then you have this carbon footprint report, you have this label, and you can also show it to your customers. Surveys show that already 1/3 of the customer avoid shops or brand where they have doubts about their sustainability. And just in 2021, it grew with 6%, or this stake of the pie. So it's more and more. So shops have to be aware that people as a consumer want to buy sustainable.
I think it's amazing that you can sort of put a price tag on that emission part. I think that's very powerful and hopefully leads to people adapting their behavior. On the other side, I also see that as a challenge for your business model, right? Because you then sort of probably have sort of an adverse selection that only the companies that are good want to stick with your payment method. And then you have lower fees, which results in less income for your company. So do you have any other income sources, or how do you deal with that sort of business model change?
Yes, of course, in the beginning, there will be the greener one who will be a part of it. And that's also fine for us because I mentioned it, the EBITDA margin is still high with these fees. And we have additional products we are developing now. Also, we don't want to just go on carbon. We also want to make a whole sustainability ESG rating, and also want to make a more in-depth supplier check where we send surveys to the supplier. They have to fill it out, they send it back, and then also we will review them and give the shops a little bit an overview about with which supplier they should talk a little bit more or not. So that are all additional service which we will which are scalable, but we will also make earnings. On the other side, it's also the good thing about PayGreen. So the vision would be that consumer understand that if a shop doesn't have PayGreen offered in their payment method, so why they don't offer a payment method like PayGreen? Because of the high fees, They don't accept it because they have high fees, and the high fees they have because they are not ecological, they have a high carbon footprint. So it's automatically a negative branding if you don't have PayGreen. So they also get a little bit the social control that they even accept PayGreen, even have a higher fee, and with this higher fee we can then also afford the smaller fee or no fee to the carbon neutral shops.
Yeah, but technically the companies that would have higher fees with you, they just wouldn't use you, probably.
Yes, and then they have the brand that they are not ecological.
Sure.
And I just mentioned this 1/3 of customers, which would not buy anymore in shops. They have these doubts about the sustainability. So they will risk that they lose at the moment this 1/3 of consumers because they show that they are not ecological friendly.
Right. And I have so many more questions because this is super fascinating.
Thank you very much.
I think at the same time, you also need a critical mass, right? To really have an impact to say, hey, we can reduce the carbon footprints of our companies by that amount, for example. Do you have any idea how big that critical mass is that you need to really have a branding, have a standing in the market that people know your brand, and other companies want to be part of that movement because they cannot afford to miss it?
It's an interesting question. We also work without this critical mass, but of course, this social control, this networking benefit will kick in when we have this critical mass. I don't know really the number from when this is. We have contact like with Thierry Kneisler and also with the founder team of Twint. They themselves, they said as soon as they had 1 million consumers who used it, this was the critical mass. From then it went by the own Twint. So it's interesting. So if you have the million, then of course it would work. And also this social control and this bad branding will also work. In the meantime, we also have the benefit to go over boundaries and over as also to Germany and make the expansion there. So that's one thing also.
Exactly. And I wonder, would it also be possible for a company that might not have that good of an ecological footprint to say, oh, cool, 1/3 of the customers out there really care about that, so I'm just going to implement PayGreen and I sort of greenwash myself without being actually making a step in the right direction. Would that even work?
Also the good thing also about PayGreen is that we cannot be greenwashing. And the thing is, if we make something greener than it is, we earn less. So PayGreen has no interest to make something greener than it is, because then we don't earn any more about this, just as an incentive system also for our own. So that's the basic, that we don't do greenwashing. Of course, it can be a company who's saying he's accepting 10% fees and has still the PayGreen partnering logo. Even there are two other labels, which really also then shows the consumers, okay, they're also in a really good way, that they really are next to carbon neutral. It could be possible. So far, we have one customer who has like a fee of 4.7%, so already really high.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. It was more like the case that he thought he is really green, and we showed him that it's not the case. So also in this case, it's a good thing, because now we know where to reduce it.
Yeah.
And I'm really optimistic that within a year, he will also reduce his carbon footprint a lot. So even if it's not ecological, we will see if we then have one time a customer who has some red flags, I would say, that we don't accept it, even if he would accept the fee. Yeah. But even if this higher fee, the fact is this incentive is that high that he then reduced the carbon, that we should really accept him, even if he's that not ecological. But then he has so much incentives to reduce his carbon footprint that it would be benefit the environment the most, probably.
Yeah, you really set them an incentive to then make a step in the right direction, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Then they have incentives. Beforehand, they would not move into carbon neutral or more sustainable. And with then, he would have an incentive to reduce the carbon footprint.
Yeah. Another question in that regard is, these companies that work with you, of course, they have to share their carbon footprint data with you, but not with the public. Wouldn't that be a better step, to more transparency, to be very open with the consumers? Or do you have an additional important function here that where you come in and make it easier to understand for consumers?
As on the one side, the consumer has not the time and information to really think about every purchase he makes. So there has to be somebody who is taking a little bit the opportunity and make this for the consumers. And our shops, they can publish our work and our reports if they want to, but it's not meant to be. On one side, it's this information, they can open it. We have this label, so it's a short communication to the customer. Where are the shops? Are they already at the finish line, or are the process to reduce the carbon footprint? Even just partnering is a good sign. We have a lot of information about the shops, and these are for sure that's secured. And we also make sure that the effort for the online shop is also not that high. At the end, even it takes for the online shop sometimes to make it this assessment. So a little bit both sides.
And another question, because there's also the end consumer involved, of course. Now we talked about the businesses itself, but in the end, when I purchase something, when I do the checkout, I also online I have to make a choice sometimes, right, between the different payment providers. How does that work, that you can incentivize more consumers to use PayGreen versus, Post Finance here in Switzerland?
Also, especially from Google, there is also made on from Deloitte a nice research about this. So far, we saw that people buy things, and the topics are quality, are the price, and everything else. And sustainable is just a second layer. It's not like sustainability is the most important. It's the price and quality has to be right, and then sustainability is an additional thing. Yeah. So we have an additional reward system where we're planting trees. Our surveys showed that this part still has to be in it. Yeah. Because also what we're doing with PayGreen, I say 50% of the people understand what we do in the back, and they realized, okay, with this incentive system, it makes sense. But 50% of the consumer does not understand what we are doing. So these people, we have also a little bit to show them with this planting trees and everything, what we are doing, and this is a good thing. So both sides. And with this reward system, the Google survey also showed that they make sustainability, consumers are doing sustainability when it's like default system. So we also notice if we are the payment method, which is on the first place and is default, a default payment method, we make really good shares. We have like already 18% of the people buying with PayGreen. And so we're already beating PayPal. They have less amount.
Nice.
And that's really good numbers, yeah. And of course, the user experience you have to improve. And then we get even more share of all the payment consumers, yeah.
Sometimes you also see that in online shops, right? That if you pay by credit card or by PayPal, that they add a percentage on top of the total amount. Would that also be a viable strategy that the merchants would say, hey, if you use PayGreen, it's free to pay. But if you use any other method, you pay 2, 3, 4% on top.
Yes, this would be also an opportunity that the shop is giving to the consumers. There are still laws which is a little bit prohibited to do that. I don't know why this law exists. But I also see in a few shops they're doing it. And then it's even better if they can show that with PayGreen, they pay really less fee. That's also a way to show to the consumer that they are carbon neutral nearly or something like this. And if they give this 4% to the consumers, then the consumer also understands that's not that ecological friendly.
Yeah, because in the end, I think that's your whole philosophy, to really let the behavior drive through the price, through the incentives. And I think that's really powerful. And hopefully the laws will allow you to also represent that in the online shops one day.
Yes, it would be also interesting as the system works with it or without, but it would not be an issue if they would show it what's the price. Then they're even more transparent. It would be also fine for us.
Exactly. You're currently also raising money. You do so on 2 platforms, with Daura and with Conda. First of all, why did you choose to go for a digital share platform?
Even in my previous startup, we did always crowd investment. It was not called crowd investment. It was just called öffentliche Kapitalerhöhung, but it was meant to be a crowd investment. And I really made good experience with it. Yeah, if you talk about crowd investment, everybody says, "Oh, but then you have a lot of shareholders, and it's a really big administrative effort and everything else." So with Innometica, we have now like 2,000 shareholders, so really a lot. And I don't think it was a lot of effort. Yeah, even there, it was really good from this crowd you had. And this crowd was also a reason why we did the crowd investment even then, because study shows that with every small investor you have, you bring 9 additional customers. So also it's a nice marketing effect that you, with your investor, you have really also building your crowd and community you're using, then PayGreen in this case.
That sounds very promising.
Yes, of course. Yes. So we also said, okay, let's do also this crowd investment to raise money here, also in the crowd. And then we go to Daura and also to Conda. And we're also really proud of it because now we are the first project which is also listed on Conda and on Daura. And that's really great. So both platforms work together and said, oh, we want to support PayGreen. And now the project itself goes with Conda, and then you have the digital share on Daura. So yeah, it's really great to have both platforms on our side.
Great combination. You said that this process is actually not as difficult as many people think. Can you tell a bit more how this process looks like from a startup, from an operational perspective?
As the crowd investment campaign, everything, as it's a really big effort, so you have a little bit misunderstood me. But also finding an investor is a big effort. So, but yeah, it's a great marketing project. Of course, you need communications in your team. You need the project leader and everything. You need a lot of documentation, make all the contracts. Like we started now also 2-3 months ago with this project and made all the documents and everything else. Also from the legal side, it's a big effort. It's in my last startup, we did everything on our own. But also with the banks, it was easier to work together because then we had one big player who was also doing all the stuff in the background. With the bank, they don't do it anymore. Yeah? Now we have this platform like Conda or Daura, they're doing it now. Also with the laws, like know your customer, the banks have more regulatories, so they are a little bit more carefully. And so, yeah, now it's great to have this platform. It was already a long time ago a need in the market, and now the platform are growing, and also encourage other people to use it.
That makes a lot of sense. And how much money are you looking for to raise in total?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's also a little bit of proof of concept. In Innomedica, last startup, in the first round, we did like 600,000 Swiss francs. So also we go for 600,000, see how much we raised there. It's really needed that we get also this money to can grow even faster and better. So yes, I really appreciate everybody who wants to join our journey and will be part of it. It will be great that also like Innomedica, we become one time a company with like 2,000 shareholders. And yes, it's depending on how much money we get, and also outside of the crowd investment, if we get some money. But the aim would be that we can also already go in the German market and make their prototype. We need an approval in the EU for what we are doing. So get this approval. Growing into the Swiss market, we have now nearly 10 shops. Go will be nearly soon have 50 shops and everything else. Yeah. And also make these additional services for the sustainability. Yeah, there are a lot of ideas how to, we can grow.
That brings me to the next question. You said you're available with 10 shops, soon 50, focusing on online shops. Will you also be expanding to brick and mortar in the future, or what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, so I said it in the beginning, the idea I had in a physical shop, and was paying with my card and had the idea. So of course, now the easiest way to implement this was with the online shops. The goal would be that we also in a few years with an app or with a card in the point of sale, this means in the physical shops, and can also offer their PayGreen. But also from the side of the sustainability side, we want to implement not only carbon, like I said, also further ESG topics to have a more holistic approach also. Yeah.
A very exciting future ahead. And what is next for you personally, Roman?
For me personally, at the moment it's PayGreen. And like I said, I just quitted my consulting job, my good paying consulting job. So I really want to grow now PayGreen and be part of PayGreen and see that in next year it's really going well. So yes, I'm looking forward for the future and what will happen with PayGreen.
Amazing. To wrap up today's conversation, we also prepared some rapid fire questions for you. Okay. So I'm either going to give you different choices or a short question, and you have to answer in one sentence.
Okay.
You ready?
In one sentence?
Ideally.
Okay,
Let's see. That. What were you buying back in 2018 when you had the PayGreen idea?
Honestly, I have no idea anymore. I know that it was like 10 francs, and in this case, it was not that much. Some lunch, maybe some fruits or some dried fruits or something like this.
Yeah, probably. Are you more of an early bird or a night owl?
It's a night owl, definitely. I need a lot of time in the morning to wake up and be productive.
What's your biggest ecological sin, personally?
For sure, I shower way too much, and enjoying all the time. I don't be on my cell phone on the laptop, so enjoying being in the shower. Even now, cell phones become more and more waterproof, so it's also dangerous in the shower.
Dangerous development.
Dangerous development, yeah. Check emails in the shower.
Exactly. If you had to choose lake or mountains?
I grew up at the lake of Lucerne, and it's direct to the mountains, so I like really both. If I would have to decide, probably mountains, but I need both.
The combination.
The combination, yeah.
What's a climate innovation that excites you besides PayGreen, of course?
That's tricky. There are different stuff. With my colleagues, for example, with Christiane, we talk a lot about that sustainable mentoring with the satellites to mentoring rainforest and ice shields and soil moisture and ocean salinity and stuff like this. That's really interesting. I also think, like yesterday we had this event with Google, and just that in Google Maps you can now choose your most sustainable route. I think it's great. Yeah. Myself, I thought about becoming a pilot in my childhood. So I'm really also into like aviatic, and I'm also curious what's going on now in the aviatic, sustainable aviatic, what happens there.
Hopefully different fuel types.
Or something like this, that would be interesting.
Absolutely. And the last question for you today, where do you go to think?
Yeah, I said it in the shower.
Of course.
I think this everybody's same. And yeah, all the time I don't be on my cell phone. I can really think about all the issue with jogging in the forest, on the lake. It's going skiing, tour skiing, or even also a day on my own alpine skiing somewhere in a ski resort.
That's
I
perfect.
enjoy it.
Switzerland is the perfect place for that.
Yes, that is.
Roman, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much to you.
All the best and lots of success for the future.
Thank you very much, Sylvain. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.